Hey YouTube, it's Mike from Maker Moose here. I originally planned to be editing a video on a Unicorn Picnic lawn fawn card that I was making, but when I got home from work, there was a package waiting for me. Had some craft supplies, which also include the solar paste from Simon Hurley. I purchased two colors. I have Golden Hour as well as Royal Flush, so a gold color as well as a purple color. It's a very creamy paste. It is, I want to call it a stencil paste. The back says, solar paste is a creamy white paste with a metallic color shift when it hits the light. It can be subtle on white cardstock, but reveals an intense colored shine when applied to black cardstock. Apply through stencils with a palette knife for definition, or apply a thin layer direct to surface for a metallic paint-like finish. Mix in Simon Hurley reinkers to create your own colors of solar paste. I should have read the back of this. My main inks are Simon Hurley Create inks from Ranger, and I have quite a few reinkers, so that will probably be in a later video, but today I'm just going to be playing. I do have a Simon Hurley stencil here called Flip Flop Chevron. I'm going to apply some of the Golden Hour paste to the top of the stencil and bring it down with a scraper. Okay, so I'm just going to pull the stencil up from one side. I am going to quickly go and clean that stencil because this, just like lunar paste, does dry very fast, and the thinner it is, the faster it dries. I was very impatient tonight, so instead of letting this air dry like I normally would, I'm going in with my heat tool here. You can already see some of that color shift just at certain angles here. That is just such a subtle look when you look at it straight on, but the moment you turn it, it is just phenomenal. The video doesn't do it justice at all. It is something that I think you have to see in person to really appreciate. Here I have a background I made in another video that hasn't been edited yet, but I do just have some inked backgrounds just with a diagonal stripe. And I thought I'd like to take this very basic color one and try out some solar paste on it. I'm just going to mask it off and use a stencil. So I'm just opening up the Royal Flush here. Here's a close-up look of it in the jar. I'm going to try going in with my finger here just to see if I can get a little thinner application. I'm only experimenting on white paper. I know it looks really good on dark cardstock, but I just want to play around with white cardstock because that's mainly what I use. So there you can see the color shift of the gold as well as the Royal Flush purple. I do really like that purple one. I hadn't seen anyone try this, I don't think, so I'm going to try and go in with a very solid stamp. I've got this balloon here, and I'm just going to play around with it a bit and see if I can stamp with this. So I'm just going in and applying some of the solar paste to my finger and rubbing it on the stamp. I'll then try and get a good impression here. It was a little uneven towards the bottom. I just didn't have enough on the stamp. So I'm just going to clean off the stamp and try again. Here I'm using my finger to add a lot more to the stamp, and then I stamp it down. It did shift a little bit just because it is very slippery. And then I wanted to see what a second generation stamp would look like as well. When the balloon that I added quite a bit of paste with my finger to dried, it actually turned out really, really well. This is probably something that I will try and use in the future, especially with this particular stamp. If I make a bunch of balloons, it would be really nice to just have a couple have that little hint of shine as you move the card. Here I'm just going to try applying some of the Royal Flush down to my work surface. and I'm going to see if I can use that as a palette to pick some of this up a little more evenly than using my finger. Because stamping the solar paste on its own on this butterfly stamp was just so subtle, I thought I'd try stamping the butterfly in Crown Me ink and then stamping the royal flush on top of it. It is a very subtle effect when you stamp it with something that's very fine lined. If I had gotten it lined up perfectly, I was just eyeballing it with my acrylic block here. If it was perfectly lined up, I think it would have a little more of the effect I was going for. So if I were to try this again, I'm definitely going to use my stamping tool. One of the backgrounds I was making when I was doing those diagonal lines, I did try stamping a background stamp on and then using the ultra thick embossing powder from Ranger. It turned out a little gloopy. I probably should have used a fine embossing powder for it, but I thought this would be a very interesting thing to try because some of the ink is protected from the embossing powder. And then I would try the Royal Flush Solar Paste right on top. One of the most interesting things here was this was a mixed background of blue and green, and with the Royal Flush Solar Paste on it, there's some times where you tilt it just so that the green disappears and is purple. And I really, really like that effect. Here I have some embossed backgrounds from my stash. I mostly use domed blending tools now, so this flat one I thought I could spare to play around with the solar paste. I have this very plain cardstock that I used it with a musical note embossing folder, but I didn't end up using it to make a card just because I thought it was so washed out and boring looking. And so I'm just going to take some of the golden hour and see if I can just apply it all over and see if I can get an even coat using this blending foam. All right, I'm just going to go over the entire thing, just trying to smooth out any areas where I have a directional look to it. And there you go. It looks like shimmer paper now. I'm going to try the same thing with the Royal Flush on this rainy background. At first thought I'd just try and do some of the raindrops, but it's so finicky that I think I'm just going to do the exact same thing I did with the musical note one and just cover the entire piece of paper, except I'm going to go a little faster. It is starting to get a little dry in the foam. I end up tearing the foam off of the Velcro, but I kept using it till the end. For this background that was ink blended and then distressed with some water, I'm actually going to go in with a paintbrush and paint each raindrop. About halfway down, I was just putting a line on top. So here it is. Again, it's very, very hard to see on camera, but it's unbelievable what a difference just a little bit of this makes. It's such a subtle sheen, but you can definitely tell it's not just regular paper. There's a glow to it. It shimmers. Since I pulled these backgrounds out of my stash, I'm just going to go through and grab a couple of the same backgrounds just for comparison. So there's almost an identical distressed raindrop one, the storm cloud rain background, which night and day, just even seeing it there, unbelievable. And then again, that plain musical notation one that I just didn't end up liking on that type of paper, but seeing it with the solar paste on top, I could use that just as a card front. This other one I would try and fill a frame and some flowers, maybe just cover up as much of it as possible. And again, it's very hard to see here on camera. This is the plain one below, and then the one that I've put the solar paste Royal Flush on the raindrops. I wish you could see this in person. I could not get it to show up on camera the way I was hoping it would. But even just holding it here, you can kind of see that subtle glow that they have. There's a comparison of the 3 different backgrounds, one with solar paste and one without. And this Chevron one, the more I look at it, the more I like it. I'm definitely going to make that into a card. There's the stamp butterfly. Again, I'll play around a little more with stamping with the solar paste, but I like where my mind is headed here. There's one with the textured stencil. I don't mind it so much, but I think I would try it a little differently. Maybe I do have some similar stencils that are a little more open. And here's the one with the embossing powder on top. And again, I'm just going to hold it. Keep an eye on the green there, and you're going to see it as I tilt it up. It just disappears into purple. It's such a cool effect. I love the purple on the green. So this gave me an idea of using the Royal Flush on top of just some ink blended stencils. So I'm going to get some Distress Oxide here. I'm going to use the Evergreen Bough and a Simon Hurley stencil called Geometric. I'm going in thinly here with the solar paste. I probably would have preferred using a blending tool or a paintbrush here, just because it has such sharp corners and it's hard to get into with my finger. All right, so here it should be completely dry now. And again, you see that green just disappear. It is the coolest thing. It moves. It's almost like it's alive. I am absolutely in love with this. My only regret is that I only bought 2 colors. Here's a background stamp and coordinating stencil that I've used frequently, but I would normally use with the lunar paste. So I just thought it would be interesting to give it a try with the solar paste. I'm going to ink up the stamp with some Tropical Tango, which is my current favorite color. All right, and I have no idea what I'm doing here. I think I forgot that I was using solar paste, and I just went into my normal, like, I'm going to do each candle design a different color. So I kind of wish I just did this all in one color really quickly, but I'm just going to speed this up. All right, and I did use some Guppy on this blending brush, so I'm just going to try and get as much ink off of it as I can before I go in for some more Shooting Star. And then I'm going to go in with my finger and the Golden Hour solar paste. And there we have it. There's the Golden Hour on top of Shooting Star. I kind of wish I used a different color there. Maybe like Guppy or Traffic Cone. Maybe even Roar for something a little different. Here's that geometry one. I really love the Royal Flush on top of a green ink. And here's my favorite again, that Chevron. It is such a nice, interesting color. I didn't even have to do anything else, and this is just going to end up being a card. I spent my whole night playing with solar paste, completely ignored everything else I had to do tonight, but I think it was worth it. This is probably my new favorite paste. I can't wait to show you more, and I promise my next video will be that Unicorn Picnic card from Lawn Fawn.